Hi, welcome to another episode of 10xMarketer podcast. Today, I had a fantastic discussion with Arnout Hellemans. He is a veteran SEO consultant with more than 15 years of experience. He has worked with some big companies and also being mentored personally by the creators of Yoast SEO plugin. We discussed some fundamental technical SEO issues that most website owners face, including the site speed optimization, rich schema implementation, indexing issues that you most often face on Google, and other fundamental SEO concepts when it comes to technical SEO. You're definitely going to love this episode if you are a website owner and if you're struggling with the technical SEO issues. Before we jump into the episode, can I request you to subscribe and follow the 10x Marketer podcast channel wherever you're listening from? We are available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube channel as well. Looking forward to have you as my regular listeners. Now let's jump into the episode and listen to the insights that Arnold has to share with all of
Hey,
us.
thanks for having me. I'm Arnout Hellemans. I live in Amsterdam. I'm 49 years old, and I've been working in technical SEO and SEO and loads of other things, but mostly that for the past, what is that, 15 years now? So 2009, 2008, around there, I started freelancing in 2010. So yeah, long time ago. I think some people might know one of my big mentors, which was Joost de Valk, the guy who initiated the Yoast plugin that is being used in WordPress a lot. I think it's the most used plugin. Um, so yeah, he taught me SEO. So that was back in the days.
Awesome. So, Arnaud, one of the things that you are really known for in the SEO circle is your skills in technical SEO, and this is one of area where most of my audience, or in general, startup founders struggle. So, for their benefit, let's start by building a basic roadmap of technical SEO. Can you explain it briefly and what all it entails?
Well, I think the best way to think about it is you start with the end goal in mind, right? In order to get traffic from a search engine, you need to have content that can be crawled and be interpreted and be put in the index with the least amount of effort. And in an ideal situation, it's also popular. So it resonates with your users, it resonates with uh, other websites, so they link to it, etc., etc. So that's where we start, right? And this is also where I see a lot of mistakes being made because a lot of people think like, let's go for the latest frameworks we're using, like I don't know, it can be React or Angular, Angular 2 or whatever, or Ruby on Rails or whatever. And those platforms, we assume that they are like the best of the best for everything, including SEO, which is often not the case because, as I said earlier, it needs to be easily understandable for search engines as well as users. So imagine having a full React website that is not served as plain HTML, but as JavaScript. It's wonderfully interactive. Once it's loaded, it works fine. But the problem is the search engine needs to download everything, prioritize this, then execute all the scripts, the JavaScript and the CSS. And only after determining all of that, they can see if they want to put it into an index in order for it to be found. So now you're making it very resource heavy or expensive to put your content in there. There are proper use cases to use React. So, for instance, if you have a news website, React can be really good because you serve it once, the whole framework, and the rest is just a feed. So it's very fast after the initial load, which is great. but for loads of other things, it's not. So it's determining what you need at that particular moment, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is read up on the basics because they still matter. And with the basics, I say page titles, headings, like use one H1, multiple H2, but only for the things that matter in the context of that particular web page. Make sure that you have unique page titles for every web page, which describe what can be found on that page. Um, and simply said, if you have good photography, awesome, but give it alt text. It adds to the context. Use bullet points. If you want to emphasize certain things, make it bold. It's it's like these are the basics that were there a long time ago, but they still are very important, right? So once you've done all of this, of course, when you start getting people involved that will build your website, make sure that you set them the right goals. Like a page cannot be larger than 1 megabyte, for instance, right? Everything needs to be HTTPS. I need to be able to um, change images myself, and they should be immediately visible on the website. So all of these kind of things are just simple, basic steps you need to take, right? But it's you need to set these standards. Otherwise, they might not happen, and then they go like, it doesn't matter, right? It does. So read up on the basics of SEO. It still matters tremendously much. I think where real technical SEO starts playing a role is when you start thinking about scalability, right? So, for instance, you're building a startup that like Uber or a food delivery service that wants to cover the whole of, say, India or whatever country. Now you need to have landing pages for every city, right? How can you make them unique but scalable at the same time, but also not too shallow, right? Because you don't want a page where there's one restaurant for that city. Like it doesn't add any value. So then you start thinking about how can we scale this? How can we build a system that puts these pages on no index? These pages can be indexed. How do we distribute the crawl to where it needs to go, to these pages and not to other pages? So that's where challenges come in. But the basics of headings, page titles, crawlable links, making sure that everything works on your web page, that's for startups, that's probably one of the most important things. Oh, and the other thing I wanna add is be careful what you put out there, right? Don't just go to ChatGPT to write your first 4 pages and say, "I'll do it later," right? I feel you only have one shot at a first impression, so just don't screw that up. It's like dating.
Yeah, it's like dating with Google.
Yeah, yeah. If you come in with all these corny opening sentences that you just printed out or memorized, it doesn't work, right? It's just not going to work with the partner you're trying to seduce. So make sure it's interesting and it's good.
Yeah, and in case of Google, it can definitely not seduce with the copied content because there are so many people trying to seduce it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and and
So,
and and really think about your USP. What's your unique selling point? Why are you better than the rest?
true. So, one of the important aspect of technical SEO, I mean, you gave a very good answer to my first question, and that builds the foundation of this entire episode. One of the first thing that a site owner has as a tool is Google Search Console, like the entire console where you can see what Google is telling about your website. So for anybody who does not understand much of what is inside the Google Search Console tool, what are the things that they need to pick up in order to understand that yes, my site has technical SEO issues, and this is how I can prioritize? So within Google Search Console, where should I get start?
Um, I think the first thing is when you get started, if you've built your website, you probably have a sitemap.xml file generated, right? Whether that's through WordPress or other tools, or ask your developer. And then what you do is you check through a crawler, like Screaming Frog. You check, like, is there are all of these pages actually are the right pages in the sitemap.xml? If they are, then you submit the sitemap.xml. You give it some time for Google to crawl your web pages, and then after a while, you'll be able to see whether they actually whether they indexed all of them, whether they indexed just a few. If they just indexed a few, you can basically inspect that, and you can see, and Google will tell you why it has not done it, or it can say crawled, not yet indexed, which is basically, I don't. It's Google way of saying, I don't think this is at the moment a big, it has little value for me to go into the effort of putting this in the index. That's my interpretation, at least, right? So you'll get all of these kinds of feedbacks. You'll also see whether Google encounters 404s, which is page not found. You'll also encounter other things, and you'll be able to see um, if your web page generated clicks. Um, what I don't really like about the interface is that you can't see the combination of page and query. So I always use a free Google Sheets add-in for that, which is called Search Analytics for Sheets.com, which is basically 2 clicks. And then if you have a small site, you'll get all the data you want. So you'll get, like, this is the query, this is the page that appeared in the SERP at this position, at this average position with this click through rate, right? So, yeah, these are, it's massively. So I always use Search Analytics for Sheets, especially for smaller sites. Um, but there's so much more information, right? If you have had a hack, they'll tell you if there are pages that are not served through HTTPS, they'll tell you. It is basically Google's only way to communicate with you as a site owner. So there's a ton of things in there.
Right. And your definition of crawl index is that if they are indexing a page, that means it has the useful information. If they have crawled it but not indexed, that means the information is not that useful and they really don't consider it as a page worthy of their attention
At that moment.
at that moment. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
understood.
I think you can't say, because I've seen it be very big, and I've seen it been very low. I think it might also have to do with the resources Google has, right? So Google wants to lay their hand on any piece of information on the web, but the web is growing faster than they can index, so they need to make choices.
True. And see, the first aspect, which is the important aspect for any site owner, you talked about sitemap and submitting the sitemap and checking the indexing. What are the tools or resources that a site owner has when it comes to fixing crawlability of the website?
Um, well, there's a lot of things, right? If you have say availability, if you have log files, you can find a lot in the log files. So this is your developer or whatever. Um, there are free site crawling tools that will do this. One of the very first I ever used was Xenu Link Sleuth, which is still alive. I just tested it. Um, but those are not, they don't support JavaScript. If you want to have one that supports JavaScript, you can use tools like Sitebulb. You can use tools like Screaming Frog. Um, those are both desktop, and you have to have a license, but that will help. Um, I think there are quite a few plugins like Yoast will highlight if pages are on no index or if there's broken links and these kind of things. So these are all there. The other thing is if uh, if you have a small site, you can figure out where that link is. So, but those are tools you can use. I think you also have so Ahrefs has one built in their tool set, a site crawler. SEMrush has one. Moz I think has a site crawler. So most tools have it. So
Understood. So thank you so much for taking this question and putting up a perfect answer. Now, the next important aspect of when it comes to technical SEO is one is the site speed. So, what is your roadmap for fixing a website speed, especially if it is a WordPress website or a React website for an early stage startup? And how much importance Google puts to site speed when they're ranking a page against their competitors?
it's a funny question, right? So I've had loads of discussions on this, and I did a duo presentation with Jono Elderson, and then I did it on myself once more here in Amsterdam. Um, okay, let me put it this way: when Google announced this, they said that Core Web Vitals might influence rankings, right? Now, the devil's in the details. And then most industry publications said Core Web Vitals will impact rankings. And now, there's two words there, right? Might and will. Um, yes, I have seen significant improvements when improving site speed. If you go from a 20-second load time to 3, like, yeah, that's going to make a big difference because nobody wants to wait 20 seconds, right? So it's fairly simple. Um, I think the benefit for SEO lies in multiple ways, right? If if you have a fast website, it means Google will crawl more pages. And in my opinion, what they do is they give you a certain amount of time to crawl your website. If, for instance, your pages take up to 1 second to load, or say 500 milliseconds, half a second, and you can bring that down to say 10 milliseconds, right? Now, that means they are able to crawl 50 pages instead of, what is that? Yeah, 50 pages instead of one. So they can crawl way more. So it helps in that respect. But I think the most important one is users. Users and user behavior is a massive signal. Um, and Google has kind of said it after the Google leak. Um, I've seen real proof that they actually use the Chrome user data not only to benchmark how fast a website is, but also whether websites become the final destination for a search. So user experience plays a massive role. Um, but if a website is loading within 2 seconds and then an SEO comes, we need to, or has a score of, say, 70 in a core Web Vitals or 60 or 50 or whatever. And then um, what you see there is in page speed insights and stuff, it's only about, are you building with the best practices in mind? It does not say whether it's actually well built, right? Um, so I tend to say to other people and other SEOs is like, um, you should only be using working on core web vitals if that is the missing piece. And in most websites, it's not the missing piece. So just make sure that at the beginning you're at a stable level, one of the basics. Make sure you don't load in these massive pictures that then get resized and massive amounts of JavaScript libraries you're not using. But if you do all of that, like, it's not going to massively move the needle for SEO.
Yeah, but
I'm,
if you
I'm
are in
sorry
the
for a lot of
competition,
SEOs, because a lot of SEOs go, yeah, but you can measure it. I can show my client I'm doing stuff. Yeah, but not really.
yeah, and so at least when you are in a competitive space, when other people are beating you in the ranking, there maybe it plays a significant role. But if you're already on the second or third page, does not really make much difference to either
Well,
Google or to the
as I
users.
said, if you load extremely slow and it's just barely usable, you need to
Doesn't
fix
matter.
it, right?
Yeah,
It matters.
and so see, knowing that my site has issues related to speed is just one thing, and being able to fix it in a proper manner without disturbing the crawling, indexing, another part is completely another skill. So according to you, let's say I discovered that my site is loading slow, the core web vitals are failing, and there is definitely an issue I have to fix.
Yeah.
uh, how do you start? Where do you start picking up from? Is it the image optimization that comes first, or how do you prioritize what action has the maximum impact when it comes to fixing the site speed?
Well, fixing the site speed, I'm gonna answer this as a proper SEO, right? It
Yeah.
depends. you could have you you could have like guessed that one. Um, Sometimes it are the images, right? I've had a website that used the carousel, and it had 80 pictures in there of a minimum of 2 to 3 megabytes each. Like, then that's a massive issue, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's more the JavaScript, because it's not so much the size that transfers over the line; it's the actual building of the web page, especially on
Mm-hmm.
mobile.
Yep.
Um, Executing the processing, the building of the website takes the most time, right?
Yep.
So what I see is mobile users, especially lower end devices, then it matters a lot to have
Mm-hmm.
less scripts, less large images that need to be resized. And those are the quick wins, those scripts, so CSS, JavaScript, and images.
Okay, I'm just taking 1 second to fix my battery, otherwise the laptop will go
Uh, no,
sleep mode.
we wouldn't want that. So all good.
Yeah, I just fixed it. Thank you so much. Uh, Maybe we'll cut this part.
All good. No worries.
Yeah. So now coming back to the questions, Arnout. The
Yeah.
next thing is there's something called CLS, then LCP. I think this is very difficult for any common layman to understand what they really mean. What is LCP? What is CLS when it comes to fixing the core web vitals? And what is the simplest way of defining these two and how to fix these?
Um. Well. Um. I would recommend they first start to really read web.dev, because there's very extensive guides on all of this, right? But I can explain. LCP is largest contentful paint. So this means, when are all the images? When is everything placed? Is visible, right? And then CLS is cumulative layout shift, which essentially means that things are moving a little bit. So like a logo that moves up. So you load it in a certain location and then it's transferred somewhere else. So for instance, that. Um, I think Philly Wiese has a CLS debugger, and it will make an actual film strip with the exact element that goes from where to where and how to fix it. So put it in the show notes. So it's Philly and then CLS debugger. With LCP, I think the most important part is that you size your images in the right way.
So I think one of the important aspects, especially for the e-commerce website, because they have a lot of images and visual resources, is image optimization. So when you have a small website which is like 70, 80 images at the max, you can do it perhaps manually and it works perfectly fine. But when it comes to an e-commerce website that is selling 1,000 plus products, it might be literally impossible for them to do it manually, fixing the image sizes one by one without losing the quality of the image. Are there any methods or tool that can help them do this at a scale without losing the
Yeah,
quality?
there are plenty of tools that can do this at scale, right? And there's also Photoshop templates that can do it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
as long as all the product photography is done in the same way, you can
Mm-hmm.
just build a script that can do this, right?
Okay.
And then there's Cloudinary that will do this. It's a
Mm-hmm.
cloud-based service. You just
Mm-hmm.
give the sizes, it will bring it to the right. I
Mm-hmm.
think another one is, um, in most cases you should not start with the PNG. Always start with the JPEG.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
JPEG or
that's
WebWP or WebP, which is the
Yeah,
latest.
but WebP is basically an optimized
Mhm.
JPEG,
Mhm.
and then you can make it all the way up to AVIF. I think another one, and I think in Shopify it's already there, because Shopify by standard uses Cloudflare.
Mhm.
But say you use Magento or WooCommerce, if you put
Mhm.
Cloudflare in front of it,
Mhm.
and you get the Pro account, you can do which costs you like $20 a month.
Mhm.
You They will optimize the images on the edge. So this
Mhm.
means that you can upload whatever you want. They will optimize
Mhm.
it and send the smaller version to the user. Um, that is a very scalable solution for a lot of things, right? So I'm a big fan of using a CDN like Cloudflare. Cloudflare is not the only one, but it's the cheapest. So if you're a startup or even a scale up, it's a very, very good one.
Great. So next thing you already discussed, I think you already mentioned, and which is the one is CSS and the render blocking part of the CSS, and the other is of course CDN, because CDN is one big topic which I think we can record an entire episode on CDN. Maybe we'll do it
Definitely,
one day. So,
definitely.
rather than going it in all detail, would you be able to explain the CSS and render blocking first, and then CDN in the simplest format, and what are the best practices for a smaller e-commerce website on implementing CDN?
Okay, so let's first start with render blocking scripts. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the easiest one is an often seen mistake is that people use a lot of tracking pixels, a lot of tools like
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft Clarity back in the days, Hotjar, and all of you've got maybe 2 or 3 analytics tools, whatever, tracking pixels, Facebook pixels, whatever. They all are basically um, interfering with the rendering
Mm-hmm.
because they all want to be executed, right?
Yep.
And the problem with that is that if you want to record a visitor, or if you want to track him, you're actually slowing his experience down. So that's the first thing. Third-party JavaScripts, but for your own scripts, I think what's really important here is to understand that you should only ship what's needed on that page, right? And I see so often that this is not happening. Mostly if people use a page builder, right? Like Elementor or these kind of things, because it's made to be able, the code is made, that is basically powering the web page, is made to make changes on the fly. So all the possibilities are in there. And if you're only using that much out of such a long file of scripts, then they all need to be evaluated whether they're needed for the execution and building of the page. So if it doesn't get evaluated, if it's not needed, you're better off stripping it all out. But the problem is, if you do that, it's not compatible with your Elementor anymore. So this is always the trade-off. If things are easy to fully change, you're highly likely shipping way too much, and all these scripts need to be evaluated by the browser, and this takes processing power and does, yeah, in basically creates a worse experience than needed. Um, and if you're thinking like the best tool, because Google will basically say in the developer tools in Chrome, you'll see like which parts of the JavaScript are not used on this page. But the problem is maybe they are used on the second page. So you can't just remove them because you break way more. Um, the only tool I've been able to find that will give you all of this, it will give you which pages are referencing this JavaScript file and are not using any of the lines, or like 80% of the lines, are not being used to render any of the page on the website. And that is Sidebulb, and it's called code coverage. So that will help you. Well, at least it won't help you because you still need a developer to go in and check it manually, because just removing scripts is not the best way of doing it. Um, but don't be obese on scripts, because it's you're basically creating obese web pages that are not, they don't need to be obese.
True. And the other aspect is CDN, which we
The
need to
CDN,
discuss. Yep.
yeah, I mean, I briefly touched upon it. I think the easiest solution is just to even sign up for the free account in Cloudflare. Um, Change your name servers so that every request first hits a CDN node. So a CDN is basically a content delivery network. Back in the days, we would use it to be able to serve in a relative fast way a web page on the other side of the ocean, right? Or say not from India, but serve from a copy that is in New York, right? Nowadays, because of the way the web now works, not HTTP 1.1, but mostly HTTP 3 or 2, we can basically, the browser will do multiple connections. So it will start getting data from everywhere. So it reduces the latency, so you get more in one go. The other thing is Cloudflare has built loads of optimization tools in the edge for free. So they will optimize images, make sure that everything gets zipped when sent to the client or used broadly. So there's all these features in there, even in the free version. Um, yeah, just I don't like whenever I encounter websites not using a CDN, I'm like, why not? And they go like, yeah, because we only have users in the Netherlands or we only have users in the UK. I said, I don't really care because if I can serve from 5 locations at the same time, it's always going to be faster.
Great. And so, see, you brought in an other important aspect of this entire discussion. Let's say I run an e-commerce website and my only primary target market is India.
Yeah.
So, does it really help if I'm loading faster in any other country that is not even my target market?
Yes, because it will load faster in India too. Because
All right.
because
Okay.
the browser
Mm-hmm.
will now connect to 4 locations at the same
Mm-hmm.
time instead of just one
Okay.
location. So basically, it's like having a uh, it's like having four lanes in the highway instead of just one.
Great. So, see, we talked about crawlability, we talked about indexing, we discussed core web vital also. The other most misunderstood or not so uh, much understood topic is schema and the rich snippet part when it comes to optimizing the website. Most site owners think that it's highly technical, cannot be implemented without help of a developer. What is the like basic way, and what are these schema or rich snippets you should definitely have on your website, and what is the easiest way to implement that?
Um, okay, I'm gonna so schema plays a bigger role than just snippets, right? So structured data, schema.org, is basically a way to make explicit what might be implicit in your HTML, right? So for instance, say you're talking about a doctor, a psychiatrist. What you can do on his about page, you use schema to say it's the same person that teaches at this university, works in this hospital, and link to their pages with same as. So basically, you're providing context around that person in a very structured way. So you make it very easy for Google to determine who this person really is. Because there might be two Jiris Sarans, right? Or there might be 10, or there might be 10 Arnout Hellemans. There aren't,
Yep.
but if there are, right? How does Google know which one should be ranked and which one wrote this article or which one they're talking about? This is where schema plays a big role. The other one is verifying, and this is like the big one that they're pushing very hard, is I don't know if you probably know Google Merchant Center.
Yep.
Yeah. So Google Merchant Center is basically it's your way to be in product search in Google, paid and non-paid. It works on a feed, right? But the interesting thing is that feed is often checked whether it's really true based on what's on the web page. And this is why you need structured data, because you can say that it's actually out of stock. But if the schema on that page still says in stock, there's a mismatch, right? So it all needs to be in sync. And otherwise, the product drops from your feed and then you lose revenue. Say, for instance, in schema, it's set to out of stock. but you now have it in stock, so you changed it. But Googlebot hasn't visited your page, so it will still fail in Google Merchant Center. So it's really important to have all of this in. But same with the return policy, same with all of these kind of things. So see schema.org or structured markup as a way for Google to validate, make explicit what is implicit on the page. So it's like
Great. So
there,
that's a
there might be a
definitely
number. What?
yeah, that's definitely a good explanation of schema part. You still want to continue answering the question? Please go ahead.
No, I just
Sorry
want
for
to give an
interrupting.
example. Say you have a part number, right? And that number is without it saying part number, or I think it's ISNI or item identification number. Um, Google needs that in Merchant Center. So it needs to be in your structured data, but it also needs to be on your page, because that way Google can see that it's actually the same product as somebody else is offering. Now, this is also dangerous because I think in the end, Google doesn't really want to give you the traffic. They just want to sell the product and take a part of the fee. But hey, that's for in a few years.
Great. So
So
thank you
yeah,
so much, Arnaut. I think we had a fantastic discussion so far. Before we move towards the end of our episode, because we have already been discussing for around 40 minutes and I didn't even
yeah.
realize that it's that much time. What are the resources, or is there a list of resources that a site owner should know or refer to when it comes to technical SEO? You mentioned schema.org, you also mentioned web.dev.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can help me with a list of resources which I can put
Definitely.
across.
I can highly recommend learning SEO.io. That is set up by Aleda Solis, right?
Yeah.
And I think SEMrush has quite a few courses also on technical SEO, and I think
Hmm.
they're free. So I will send them over so you can put them in the show notes. Um, uh, others is what else can you find? I think what is really helpful is look at the Google Webmaster blog. It also has good explanations. Schema.org is also a good one, but also look at like what Google is publishing around these things. They actually have quite a few really helpful guides if you wanna start. Um, and once you have the basics right, you start understanding like where the nuances are and what is the complete truth and what isn't. But let's first get started. I think those are really good resources. I think what Google is doing with web.dev is amazing. There's a lot of new technologies, but also very easy to follow guides. So yeah, would highly recommend that. Um, and I think Google also has the webmaster hours. The they are like webinars and podcasts. I think the Google Webmaster team has a podcast, and they share interesting details on there as well.
Great. So that's a fantastic list of resources, and some of the resources that you mentioned, I'll also put it on the show note. Thank you so much for uh, being here and sharing your fantastic insights on technical SEO. And thank you so much for listening so far. If you haven't subscribed to the 10x Marketer podcast, make sure you do that before closing the episode. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us, Arnaut. It was really nice
My
talking to
pleasure.
you,
My pleasure, Jerry.
and we would love to host you again in future if possible.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.